I'll call the meeting to order. It's 1:31. And let's start with I have a couple of opening things, and then Janice might have something. So let's start with a prayer. Read, if you would, please.
Would you pray with me, please? Lord, I'm going to make this prayer short because I'm here with 50 or 60 or 70 people from Mount Vernon Towers, and we're all praying together for peace in the world, for our health, for all those that serve us, for the poor people in Iran and Palestine that are slugging it out. It's a tough time. We appreciate you taking care of us. We ask you to bless our endeavors and bless our business today. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reed. Just to set an expectation here, I just want to set an expectation about the meeting today. This is really the last, what would be a board meeting. Okay, so we're going to go into the sort of annual meeting cycle, and that annual meeting cycle is really simple. We're producing a budget, we're going to send out documents and all that stuff, and we'll get into any more detail of that in a little bit, but we'll send out documents for that. We'll have a budget review session where there'll be a lot more detail. I am going to take everybody through the recommendation from the Finance Committee to the board, all right, so that everybody can see what the Finance Committee has reviewed and will recommend to the board. We'll take a vote from the board at the end of that. Now, we did a couple of things, right? We took out some business, and we're not going to have the Q&A at the end of the meeting that we would normally do. What I hope that we'll focus on is if you have questions that relate to the topic that we're discussing, that if appropriate, we want to make sure that it's focused on the budget itself. Even though we will have a more detailed budget meeting on the 30th of November, this is an opportunity to ask some questions about that, and we'll try to answer it, because at the end of the day, it is just a recommendation that we're making to the board, and the board will vote on that. And then we'll go through the normal committee process. Review. So, having said that, I will call for a motion to approve the board minutes from last month.
And, sorry.
That was he seconded it, if you want to say something. Scott seconded that motion, right?
Right, I second.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
At the very top, Janice, it's on mute. Just slide it to the other way, where the green light is on the power.
There you go, you're good.
Thank you. Am I on now?
You are.
Thank you. Yeah, as for the approving of the minutes last month, I just want to make one correction to the minutes that will be noted, and that is the pricing of a cleaning machine was not included in the quote as stated last month in our minutes. It was a misunderstanding to the question, so just to clarify that, and we'll make a note going forward. So
with that clarification, do we want to vote? Doesn't change
Second.
anybody's?
Aye.
Okay, aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good?
Good. Oh. Sign your John Henry.
Rita, do you want to you can get started?
Yeah, I'll start out talking a few minutes about the November 30th budget meeting. That will be at 7:30 that evening. The owner packets will come out by mail on November 6th or 7th, and I'm also going to email the packets. I know some of the owners who do not live here, we're at the mercy of the mail, and that doesn't always play in our favor. So to answer that question that I was asked yesterday, I will email them. We'd anticipated on really doing it the 10th, but the Meet the Candidate first session is the 8th, so I'm trying to get those packets out so you guys can have the candidate packets as well. Alrighty, diving into the financials. So you're looking at 9 months of actuals and 3 months of forecast. Really, that time period is the time that we cut it off and looking at the budget numbers and what might happen for the next year. Quickly go through September. Line number 1 shows our total revenue for the month of $489,925. The total revenue for the year is $4,562,118, and my forecast anticipates that we'll close the year out at roughly $6 million in revenue. Line 2, our expenses, our total expenses for the month was $391,688. For the year, $3,510,797, and I anticipate to close expenses out for the year around $4.6 million. Our net income for the month was $76,905, which the variance in what I had forecasted for the month was $269 difference. And I anticipate that our net income through the year will be right at $1,167,000.
And let there be light.
Strange. Moving on to our cash. Our total capital account has $2,135,734. Our total operating cash at the end of September was $369,952 for a total of $2,505,686. In September, we did have some large cash outlays to start our projects. We paid deposits for the elevator and the flooring project of $162,000. Our quarterly insurance payment of $16,000 and our estimated tax payments of $23,000, so that decreased our operating cash by $201,000. Moving on to our meals. On page 3, you can see that we're, again, staying pretty consistent with the total meals for the month at $6,500. Price per meal is still in the $19 range. And our food cost was a little higher for September due to the fact that we bought about $4,000 worth of turkeys. So.
But it dropped down from last month, though.
Yep, still a little down from the previous month, but we're still hovering around.
It's in our all-time low.
No, our all-time low was in July, which we had more meals in July, and which generates a little bit more revenue as well. Sales and leasing, we have 2 units for sale and 1 unit for lease. Is that correct, Jerry? Is that correct? Okay. I want to point on this. We talked about this a little earlier today. Just because there's a vacant sign on the door, the floor ups put the vacant signs on the door, so when we're delivering flyers and towers talks and so forth, the door pockets don't get jumbled up with a bunch of mail they've got to empty out. Just because it says it's vacant doesn't mean it's available to show for lease or sale. There's many units that just sit vacant. Families just send their HOA in. We decided to remove the vacant signs on the door, and we're going to put a little sticker on the door to signify that it's vacant. And I'll get with the floor reps this week on that. That's all I had on. Jerry, you want to talk about the dining committee?
I'll say, starting next week, we put together a new lunch and dinner menu.
Do you have a mic? Oh.
Can you hear me? Okay. Next month, the new menu starts November 1st, which is next week. We've put a really nice lunch and dinner menu together, added a lot of vegetables. We've been taking a lot of suggestions from the residents, and it looks like hopefully y'all will really enjoy this next one. It's more oriented toward the winter and the fall months with stews and things like that. So look forward to that next week. That's it.
Social.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a pretty busy month so far. And we've had about 4 activities. So I'd like to do some shout outs. We had a conference, I would call it, that Joanne Akers, I'm not sure if she's here, but she had led 5 Wishes, and it was very well attended and very well needed. We had a visit from the FBI, and I give a shout out to Sue Whistler. She was the one that brought the FBI in, so we thank her. And Chris Carr came to talk with us, and there's a shout out to Jane Christian. She worked long and hard to get him with the scheduling changes, and such an important fella that we finally got him in this month as well. We had another beautiful Buy for Nothing Day, and I give my shout out to Joan Walsh. There was a lot of people involved in that. It can't be successful if you all don't bring things that other people would want, so we thank you for that. I have to give another shout out because all of the things that are left over from our Buy for Nothing Day is donated. And usually we have the Salvation Army that comes that same day and picks up our leftovers and takes them to the Salvation Army. This month, they could not come until the 16th. We had our day on the 10th, and we had no place to store all of the leftovers. So I have to say thank you for Scott Goins. He did bring his truck. He loaded everything up, and he took it down to Goodwill. So we thankful to him that we didn't have any clutter of leftovers. So appreciate that. I also want to recognize our activities manager, Brianna. I'm not sure if she's in here. As you all know, October, November, and December are so very hectic, and I really just don't know how that she keeps everything running so smoothly. So since we work so closely together, I wanted to give a shout out to Brianna as well for working so hard and making everything so smooth. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about architectural. In other words, let's talk about the chases. Since Cooper Carey is no longer in the picture on that, the architectural committee has picked up the bits and pieces and putting things together that were missing from the quotes and from the requirements that Cooper Carey put forth. In the last month, we've had, I think it's 6 different meetings over the last month, and I personally have been on the phone with architects, with engineers, to get additional data, information, and bring this thing to a conclusion. All of us on the committee, and I'm sure everybody in this room is tired of talking about it. We want to see something happen. We want to know where this is going to go. I know I've made comments before that we were going to resolve this by next month, and that didn't happen. But rest assured, it's a major priority and gets lots of attention. And we want to come to you with some positive recommendations so that we can go forward. And with that said, I'm going to go to the Finance Committee.
Well, now I'm going to stand for this because we're going to put this up on the big screen. So if anybody has a tough time seeing and you want to come a little closer, now would be the time to do it. Bunch of eagles back there. And I don't mean Philadelphia Eagles, yeah. How we doing? Who's got control?
He's turned it on. It should be popping
All
up.
right, he's turning on the TV, and you have control? Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see what you got up here for the beginning.
Has he got the remote? You got the remote, Clay?
Well, we have no signal, and that sort of corresponds with, I think, what a lot of people think about the internet service, right?
Oh, you know what? I wonder if it's jerked out
That
from
is,
the back.
how we doing? All right. So, but what we do have is we now have employee of the day, who is Clay, who's going to work under all this pressure, all this stress right now, and rewire the whole TV. And
It worked earlier.
It's okay.
And you know, we might, since there's a lot of data that's going to be given, you might want to just make sure that your phone is turned on silent. That
Thank you.
would be helpful.
So as we get this thing going, one of the things that I want to make sure that we do is that we actually do, if you have questions about what I'm about to show,
Doesn't make
feel free to ask them, right? I'm here to answer
you on
them.
the-
This is not that, we're not going to go through, there's a lot of data here, but it's more of a story than it is data, okay? And because this is, we've had 4, 5 different Finance Committee meetings. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about everything from inflation to employment to cost of living to, what we spend money on, what we shouldn't be spending money on, what we want to spend money on. And at the end of the day, the Finance Committee, who's made up of Al Burgess here in the front row, Jeff Daniel up here in the front row, Scott Goen, who is he in here? Scott is his, there he is, back there in the back row. And we have Jim Ross, who's where I would like to be, which is Barcelona. And I hear he'll be back tomorrow. But even though he hasn't been here for the last 2 weeks, he has participated over the phone and mail with us. So I want to thank everybody for all the contributions that you've made. I think we have a good plan here. And I guess, you know what, I'm gonna go, while he's got that going on, I'm gonna grab a deck. The one that you guys don't have, but you'll have in your package. And I'll just get going by talking about, now I need my glasses, not just a deck. So let me just talk about the total, not quite there. Bad cable?
It worked earlier.
Make sure you're sharing your screen too. And
There
that
we
you're
go.
not- Okay. Oh, look at that. We're in a, don't show anybody your mail. All right. Just saved myself trouble reading. Okay, so let's sort of talk about what the Finance Committee was looking at, all the different things, and what the general recommendations are without getting to the price tag on that yet. Okay, we agreed that we would fully fund operating expenses. We've been talking about this for 3 years. All right, but it also includes capital reserves. What we've been spending, $240,000 a year in capital reserves, because that's something that we have to do. It's not something that should be optional, or if we have the money, we do that. We ought to put that in the budget. Okay, so we said that we would do that. We also have another expense out there, which everybody, well, I don't know if everybody knows about. I'm not going to make a big deal about it because it has been asked and answered, which is a deferred compensation package that was given to a former executive director. We have it, whatever, and so, but it comes out of our bank account and we have to pay for it. So the dues pays for those 3 items: operating expenses, capital reserve, and the deferred compensation. We want additional support for Rita, okay? She works really hard. We know she does. But we know everything goes through Rita, all right? And it would be nice for you to have a little bit of help. So we want to support that. We have cost of living increases for our staff, okay? Inflation is here, it's been here, okay? And we need to increase their wages like anybody else in order to stay competitive. We wanted to minimize changes to fees this year. You know, last year we did a lot of this and that, and we were desperate to sort of make sure that we had as much income as we could because we got a big stuff that we got to do. All right, so we looked at the fees and those schedules and said, yeah, we're not really going to do much here. We have to address some inflation anomalies, okay? I was telling the board earlier today that what we tend to do is talk about CPI in terms of, oh, gee, look at the announcement came out, it was 3.2%, oh, what great news. And that includes Atlanta and Des Moines, okay? It includes San Francisco and New York City, okay? But we are here. So we have to take a deeper look, and we have to look at what goes on here, okay? And it's a little bit different. It's actually, inflation has been a little bit worse in Sandy Springs and Roswell, and the cost of food and such has been different. We've been notified by Georgia Power that we would have an increase in our electric costs, and so we have to accommodate those. Those are recommendations that we're making to the board. I want to make sure that everybody understands that HOA dues applies to these things, which we talked about, and every other dime that we bring in here goes to repairs and improvements. Okay? And we're going to talk a lot about that as we go through, what's been done, what hasn't been done, why, not so much why choices were made, because we're going to do a little bit of history lesson. We want to make sure that we're monitoring our profits to minimize tax liabilities. Now, Scott Goins back there will say, taxes aren't a bad thing, all right? Well, they're not a bad thing because it means you're making money, all right? So it's a sign that you're making money, that you're profitable. But what happens is you might have real things to do. And it doesn't mean you're trying to avoid taxes. It just means that if you do the real things you need to do, then what you'll do is you'll subsequently reduce your taxes. What you'll save, all right, well, what you'll save will be taxed at a lower rate, right, in that case. The worst thing that can happen is if you saved 100, you might have to pay $15 or $20 in taxes, but you get $80 back, all right? And you get to put it away for a rainy day, all right? So that's the worst thing that can happen. And so I agree with Scott, taxes aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they're very nuanced, okay? We're recommending that we talk about, the bidding process here. I think that it's not that we do a bad job getting bids or quotes or anything like that. But what we haven't developed over time, and we're seeing it now, is we don't really have a network of vendors, people that we trust, so that if A can't come out, B can come out, right? And if you need them today, you don't have to wait because you only have one, and they determine what your price is going to be. Okay, we need to develop next year our vendor world and our network world of those types of goods and services so that we stay competitive. We want to set aside, we're recommending that we set aside some funding for professional services, meaning let's get an engineer out here that actually does a real structural survey. Okay, that can not just look at cracks from the outside, but they also can see what's inside, because that's what we really need to do. We also need something that we haven't done, which is a reserve study. We need to look at our mechanicals, we need to look at our systems, and we need to look at when their life expectancy is, where they are in that cycle, and then what we want to do is make sure we're planning for that in the future. I mean, that makes sense, right? So that we're not surprised by anything. And what we are doing, which I hoped to be able to do today, because that last bullet was different the other day. We got to defer the assessment discussion about the chases. Because we just don't quite have enough information. Scott is trying his darndest, right, to get that out so that we get it. Yeah, we got some ranges. There's some words out there. There's some people got some prices that they have in their head, but we're just not comfortable dealing with that because we not only haven't determined what the cost would be. We haven't determined how exactly we would go about paying for it, okay? I think it's fair to let everybody know that you should expect some sort of assessment, but you should also expect that the board is trying to minimize that assessment, okay? And that's all I would say about that. Let us turn the clock back. Oh, not ready to turn the clock back, but that's okay. I'm good with this slide. Okay. No, go back to where we were. Because this is the bottom line. This is what we're recommending. I figured we should get this out of the way instead of me to create all this suspense for everybody. Okay, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? You gotta listen to everything. Because I'm just gonna tell you up front. Okay, here it is. We're using a budget that we've developed out of the 23 forecast. In the 23 forecast, we have 9 months of data and 3 months of expected data. We are talking about a 3% general increase to compensation for everybody. Seems reasonable. COLA's 3.2. We're going to function on 3. We're going to give Rita that crucial management support. All right. We're going to add the professional services, food and energy costs, when we talked about these in the recommendations, and fully fund the operations. All right. So you got that. Well, what that means is that the bottom line is this is what a studio might look like. This is what a one-bedroom might look like in terms of an increase, all right? An increase of $97 to a 2-bedroom, okay? And when you sort it all out and you look at what the forecast is versus what the budget for next year is, it's a 6.2% difference. That's what it is. So that's the HOA dues increase that we're going to recommend. That at the end of this, I'm actually going to take a vote on. Okay? But what that 6.2 does is it does all the things we've been talking about. Most importantly, every dollar that comes out of our non-operating expenses in terms of profit becomes available for repairs, and it becomes available for improvements. And there'll be lots of discussions about where that goes, but every dollar of it will be eligible. Okay. Let me pause right there for a second just to see if there are any general questions about that so far. I take that that's good. Now, I will also say, if you got your answer and you want to leave, this is the moment to do it, because it's going to get rough from here.
I have a question.
Yep.
How come a 2-bedroom goes up almost $20 for one extra bedroom?
It's assessed on the square foot. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, it's a percentage. Yeah, it's a percentage in the docs.
We have a declaration that tells us exactly how we have to assess. We can change the declaration, but that's our declaration. So actually, is it a declaration or yeah, it's a declaration.
Yeah.
So we could go back to it. Now let's turn back the clock. Okay. We're going to go through a little bit of history, and this might be painful, all right? But I think it's important, because it's about where we've been, where we're at, and why we're here, okay? And because it's going to be a story about inflation and dues. It's not going to be a story about decisions that were made in the past, okay? The reality is that from 2013 to 2019, our costs have been going up. That's the reality of it. But if you look at what we've done with dues, we haven't been as aggressive as our costs, right? This is the difference between inflation and our dues. We have not risen our dues. Now, that might feel great for a lot of people, right? And those decisions were made for whatever reasons that those decisions were made. Good, bad, indifferent, I don't know, I'm not judging on it. What I will say is that that's what happened. So we drove a gap. And every year we had that gap, we weren't making any money. In fact, we were losing money. Our income, our operating income was less than our expenses, okay? But we don't notice that. The reason we don't notice that is because we're in a cash cow business. You pay dues every single month. We get cash every single month. Really easy to spend it every single month. And you know what? If we spend more than we have in our bank account, it doesn't matter. We're going to get money to cover it. Okay, so what was happening was, the reality of it was, as this gap grows, this deficit grew. Okay, and it's just not sustainable, because someday the musical chairs stop and there's not a chair for somebody. And that's what would have happened. So let's throw the history away. Oh, look at that. You like that? Okay, so we're going to throw the history away. So let's talk about, we're going to come back, we're going to come beyond 2019 a little bit. Okay? And these two bars, the red and the green, the blue and the green represent our dues as they've been assessed, and CPI, or inflation, as it occurred. Okay? So what you can see there is, you can start to see this gap start to develop. And by 2023, this year, we've got a 12.8% difference. Okay? By 2019, that first slide that I showed you, we already had an 8% discount, right? So felt good, you know. Costs are rising, our dues haven't risen as much, it's been better, we've had good news every single year to tell you, and that all feels really good. But if you try to catch up and you're sitting on top of an 8% discount, and now you know in the next 4 years, it starts with COVID. We're going to talk about that. It starts with COVID, but the HOA dues went up 15.5%. You've seen it, right? We did a 7.5, a 5, right? We've done some big increases, 15%, but inflation here, 22%. Okay? And if we try to close that gap, any dues assessment that we would give you would be into the double digits, well into the double digits. I'd be coming to you saying, Carol, 15% dues increase. Right, that wouldn't feel too good. Wouldn't feel too good for many people. So let's throw that away. Oh, yeah, well, we threw it away, but the thing that I forgot to mention, go bring it back. Take it out of the trash can. Just so that you know, okay? It's not real, but just so that you know. Those red bars represent the amount of money, cash, we would have had in the reserves if we just didn't have that difference. And as it turns out, that the sum of those bars is $1.7 million. Okay? So we could have $1.7 million in the reserves today, had we done that. Now you can throw it away.
Additional.
All right, so here's the end of the history lesson. Okay, the end of the history lesson is we've had these accumulating costs. But what happened was a good thing happened. It's hard to say good because it was COVID. All right, so it wasn't good, but it was good in a way with respect to this. Because when COVID hit, we lost our dining facilities, we lost all these things, and our costs all of a sudden came down, right? And so when those costs came down, all we had to do was now figure out how to keep them there while we recovered. Okay? All right? So you got people like, what we did was we made some changes. We changed management, we changed the board, turned it over, and we got people like Lorraine there. You were here. Reed, Janice, right? No, Janice, you weren't here yet. You're coming. Okay? And this became, how do we do this? We have to do it. And what happened, the change in the board was such that we could change the dynamic. It was hard. 2020 was impossible. All right? I skipped 2020. I don't want you to go back to the slide, but that slide took 2019 and we skipped to 2021. The reason, because things were happening in 2020, right? We churned over the board, and then what happened was we then found ourselves as junior members of the board, okay? And in that, we were facing a number of things. We dealing with almost $100,000 in legal expenses. You know, this is all the deferred stuff, the deferred comp, the arguments, the costs that were going on, the fact that it was invisible to the community, it wasn't transparent. So some things were that we had to make some changes. We had to put in a fiscal plan, and we had to keep those costs to where they were, not to let them rise. Remember, we were operating here in the red, okay? So we had to stop that, okay? By 2022, we're not in the red, all right? Those actions, being able to maintain that, having Janice come into the board, having the help of her husband, Scott, okay, allowed us, Reed, allowed us, Bill Lane, who's not here anymore, allowed us to make the tough decisions that we needed to make to maintain that level. And if some of you were here, you probably remember me saying in 2021, we are going on an austerity program, okay? And I repeated that many times, austerity, because we needed to keep our costs the same. What it was almost a 14% decrease in our expenses. That's what covered the inflation gap. Okay? So that got us to this point where we generated pre-tax profits of almost $1 million in 2022, and we are sitting on pre-tax profits of 1.17 million in 2023. So let's fly into the present. Oh. I learned from Al to be a little bit more creative. Okay, so here we were at negative 764 coming into 2022. Great news was we actually did generate profits, big profits in 2022. Okay? Thing is, we didn't want to, we spent on what we needed to spend, but we didn't want to spend that because we still had to clean up our books, right? So the negative operating income that was sitting on our tax returns became offset by the net income that we had, the pre-tax profit that we had, and we wound up with a pretty tiny tax bill. But we did, for the first time, have to pay taxes. Okay? Now we're sitting on 1.16 or 1.17, and I'm going to come to the right in a second, but this budget, now covering our operating costs, now covering our reserves, now covering the deferred compensation, will result in all that other income that we get from whether it's the PCC, exporters of income to the independent, whether it's the cell tower, whether it's the dining, whether it's the maintenance fees, it all now comes into profit. And we expect another $1 million in profit in 2024 if we ratify this budget. And you know that we have some big bills that chase us. All right? We have other things that we want to do. But you know what? If you do this, we're generating about 80 to 90K a month in pre-tax profit. Okay? And if you do this, then you'll have $1 million forever unless you screw it up. All right? So we're going to try not to screw it up next year. How we've spent that money this year, how we're intending to, because we haven't spent it all. We're in the process of spending that pre-tax profit as real expenses on things that we need. The things that we need was we had a B elevator that we have needed to replace since 2013 or 2014. We haven't done it. Too much money. Okay? We have it on the schedule for maybe next year. Okay? But it needed to get fixed because I think, Reed, you got stuck in it, right? You got stuck in the elevator, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, you didn't like that. We didn't want you stuck in the elevator. So since we had money, right, you were stuck in the elevator too. All right? So we said, you know what, why we don't want Reed getting stuck in the elevator. So we decided to, for the benefit of Reed, we decided to,
Oh, Lord.
Frank, that's facetious, by the way. In case somebody wants to like quote me later and say, we did something for a board member which isn't beyond what could happen. So while we did that for Reed, we also had promised the third and sixth floors be updated. So that's in progress now. We needed to have the central air conditioner. You guys saw that big crane out there a week ago, right? Giant crane, big project. That's heating and air for the central facility, right? That's what's keeping you guys comfortable right now, all right? We needed to put money into the personal care center. I mean, I know a lot of people go, ooh, why would we do that? You know why we would do that? Because they generate the income that lets us do these things, all right? And Emerson, how are we doing up there?
Wonderful.
I didn't hear you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I gotta say, I love the form, Brian, because it's not carpet, and I can make time. I get to my point.
Okay, Rita, do me a favor.
Speed limit.
Rita, would you put a no speeding sign up there?
But I'm exempt.
I'm exempt.
I get exempt from the new speeding, because I'm careful, but I'm kind of like Speedy Gonzales.
Well, you better be careful, all right?
Roger, and I'll try.
All right, so, thank you. We had to put in boiler systems. We did the fire system, call system, whatever it is. We are trying to do some stuff in Table 13, freshen that up a little bit. Table 300, freshen that up, and now we're a little delayed in all that stuff. And then we are looking at, as part of that, is looking at the parking deck lights and some replacements of the parking deck lights that we need out there. Okay, but it leaves two things. It doesn't spend it all. It's retained, all right? It's retained. But because we're retaining money, there's going to be a tax consequence to that. All right? So this number here, for those who can't see the eye chart, that's $228,000 of pre-tax profit that we will have once we go through the spend. And the tax implications to us on that is about $50,000. And I thank, again, Scott Goins, because he took his time to do a pro forma tax return for us so that we would know exactly what it might be. All right, still an estimate, but he took the time to do that because he has that skill set, and we took advantage of it. So we're still talking about that piece of it that we need to go. So let's see, I said fly. Let's go to the future. Here you come, okay. All right, so we are still looking at our 116. Okay, because we might not necessarily be done with that. And 984 is what we expect to have next year unless we find other income in other places. But because we're not dealing with the fees, the fee structure, or that type of thing, really the only way we will do that is probably by getting more occupants in the PCC. Would you like that?
I would like that.
Okay, we'll get you some friends up there.
But make sure it's necessary.
Yes. It has to be necessary.
Yeah.
All right? It has to be necessary. And maybe we'll have a square dance.
Oh, you want to see me that stuff?
All right. The things that are still on the table that we're trying to see if we can deal with this year is, you might not be able to see this, but this says replace riser valves. We got valves all over this place that are water valves, and some of them are getting older, and before they start leaking, we ought to try to find a way to replace them, and there's a schedule that we're supposed to do, about 20 of these a year. We haven't got to any this year. Jim Russ, who was is he a mechanical engineer, Jim? Yeah, he's a mechanical. Okay. He was with Lockheed Martin, and he worked on airframes for fighter jets, missiles, that type of thing. Unbelievable background. He was sort of walking the deck. Now, we know from a study that there were issues, cracks on the decks and all that stuff. And there were some post-tension strand cables that were exposed to the elements. And, those things can rust, and Nova Engineering came in and said, hey, you might want to deal with that before it becomes a problem. So we went out, and Scott assessed it, went to Rita, said, yeah, I think we ought to be doing this. So we got that done. So all that safety stuff was done. But, you can't see what you can't see. So we're looking at, we've talked to a real engineer that can do a sort of a deep dive into this, but they have to come out and inspect. So we don't know that we'll get that done this year, but that's what we're trying to fit that in. There's a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of discussion about a roof anchor system. We've talked about this over the years, actually. You can't wash the windows by the elevators, right? Because we have no way to access them without bringing in $300,000 of scaffolding for a one-time job. So one of the things that's out there is hopefully another getting one of the vendors that are doing the chases to come in and give us an appropriate bid and have us understand the scope of the work that goes along with that, and then we have an actual quote from another company on the roof anchor system, which gives us full body coverage. Okay, and that's important because we need that full body coverage to get to all those pieces, and we're going to need that. And we need that no matter what. Right? That feels like something that we should have done many, many years ago, but we don't have it. And there were some roof repairs that needed to be done up there. So if you're doing the anchors, maybe you could save some money and get them to glue the roof together where it needs to be glued together. Right? So that's what's still on the plate for the rest of this year, to try to see if we can make some of those things happen. The 984 for next year, okay, that's income. That's not our reserves. I think Rita said that our reserves are looking like they'll probably be about 1.8 or something like that million, okay? So it's not the reserves, but it's new money, okay? And that new money will contribute to any of these other projects that we have going on, whether it's the chases, whether it's the sealants around the doors and the windows, right? So that's basically where we're going with that, okay? But the point that I wanted to make, the point that I really want to make is this doesn't ever have to go away. That doesn't ever have to go away. It can be repeatable, it's sustainable, and it can happen every single year, okay? So let's get to the recommendation. Yeah, okay. So here are some details. These aren't the details that will be in your package because I think we generally send out a line by line or group by group detail of every single line so that you can see every single cost and where it is, right, for full transparency. But in general, this is how the numbers add up, okay? To maintain this profitability, continue building the reserves, Rita and the Finance Committee has come together, and we are requesting $302,000 from the board, okay, to put that in the budget for next year, to put that up to the owners. Okay, 74,000 comes from the CPI, most items, 3%. 31K additional in electricity, because that's a 5% increase. We got increased food costs, 35K, a staff head count, call it 100, 50K in professional services, and some other stuff. We got some cameras that got to go in. So 302. So right now, I'm going to make a motion to the board that we ratify that number, 302. Does anybody want to second it?
Second.
Okay. We got a vote? So we got a unanimous vote?
Aye.
All right, so that's what's going to go in your packages. Now, I didn't stop for a second to take any questions, so I apologize for that. Even though it sucks because now what we just did was vote. So I got to back up a little bit.
Will this meeting be recorded and put online?
This is being recorded, right? Clay,
Yes.
is Clay, this is
Yeah.
being recorded. So we can put this whole presentation online. And we'll do something similar in that 30th meeting, right? So that a broader audience can get a hold of it, right? And get it sort of in their face. All right? Any other questions about this? I was really expecting like a knockdown, drag out.
I will.
No? Okay. All right, so I don't think I have anything special for the next slide, but let's just go to it. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a question?
Problem is, when I checked before, we can't see this video until next month when the board approves it.
That's not true. It's the board minutes that is not available until the board approves it.
But the video is.
Yes, the video goes on usually within a week.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, gee, boy, did I jump ahead. Sorry, I don't even need this slide because I got so excited about you guys just approving the 302 and it coming so naturally. All right, so we concluded that, we recommended it, and that's what the increase is, right, that we've proposed. Any other questions? Okay, let's drop this for a second.
You ready?
Yeah, drop it. Or flip it. Okay. I'm going to leave you with a couple of things, because I'm not done. MVT has never been in better financial shape. Okay? I showed you back to 2013, and I know we were a mess before then. All right? I'll tell you why I put this quote down here. And I hate to be addressing it, but I'm going to tell you why I put this quote down here. Headlines are what misleads you because it's always bad news. You guys know that. You see it every day. All right? But improving things is not. And Bill Gates said that. Okay? Very smart man. But I want to talk about, for a minute, just what your obligation is as a group. All right? I'm not running for the board. I mean, you guys might know, somebody might know, everybody might know, nobody might know. All right? I will not be running for the board next year. All right? But at the end of the day, when I think about Janice, Lorraine, Reed, Bill Lane, all right, who were stewards of this, all right, stewards. They allowed the difficult choices to be made. They allowed the votes to come through that allowed us to make some changes, okay? This is financial stewardship, and you guys are the only ones that can really do it. Okay? So it's one thing to come to a meeting and go, oh, gee, what's going to go on in the meeting, right? But you got to pay attention. Okay? You have to pay attention. This isn't just another activity. Coming to the board meeting isn't just another activity. It's an important meeting, which is why we opened it up to everybody. If some of you may recall that the board meetings were in the Magnolia Room. And if you didn't call ahead, you wouldn't get a seat. And you weren't allowed to ask questions. Okay, eventually that changed a little bit. Okay, but right now, this has been an open board that has allowed people to participate, okay? Oh, against some of our better judgment, my better judgment, to let that happen at times, okay? But it is about making sure you're paying attention to these things. You are owners, it is your money, it is not my money. Some of it's my money, 1 unit worth, right? But it's your money, and you need to pay attention. I mean, I got a letter. This quote is really important, right? And then I'm going to address one thing that I want everybody to hear from me, because I'm not going to be on the board next year. But I got a letter, and well, I need my. It's not a letter, actually. It says, I have discovered the chair has ignored MVT bylaws and declarations, wasted HOA money, engaged in a clear conflict of interest by hiring his wife's company to do painting. Right? I got that. Total crap, all right? I stand on those numbers. I'll start with that. The second thing, with respect to anybody here who wants to talk about the relationship that I have with a painting company who happens to be in here, shame on you. The reality is that my wife's company, it's not her company, it's her and her brother. They came and made fair bids. I don't get involved in it. Didn't even vote on it. Okay? For everything we got going on, we got 3 bids. Dave Wurtenberg, you got us a bid. High bid. $49,000. All right, somebody else. P3? Who's P3?
That's the company Dave recommended.
That who did the?
Dave recommended P3.
No, not P3. Who's the other one? There was another one.
Dixon.
Dixon.
It was actually 4 quotes.
Okay, we've done business with Dixon probably, right? They're about 42,000, all right? The only thing I would ask my wife to do with the painting, give me a break, all right? So the bid came in at 37, whatever. You guys make that arrangement, not me. I didn't even vote on it, all right? You know what the difference between $37,000 and $41,000 or $42,000 in besides the simple math? Or $49,000 besides the simple math? It's somebody not making a profit to benefit you people, okay? And it absolutely is shameful that that kind of crap would go on here. And so I'm going to end it there. But I want you guys to remember, you guys are responsible. You guys are responsible for getting the facts. You are here because in some way you want to participate. We might not agree on how that takes shape, okay? And what we agree on, what we disagree on. But at least you guys are here to make some contribution, so make the contribution. There are 250 other people who aren't, okay? Maybe it's 225, okay? So with that, drop the mic. I'll leave it at that. You okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for your help, and thank you for the work that the board has done to make sure that this happens. I guess we're going to go, you're going to have to beat that one.
I'm not even going to try to address that. I'm just going to be very short and sweet and tell you a few things about the nominating committee. The nominating committee has received 5 different candidates for the 3 positions that are available. We have 2 candidates have sent in their paperwork to us, which is Terry Strickey and Dan Castle. They are for the outside owner position. We have 3 people who have applied to the inside owner position, and they are Janice Adams, Nancy Rogers, and Tricia Morris. We will be sending a packet to you all with the information on the candidates. And also, there are 2 Meet the Candidates meetings that are scheduled. One is for November the 8th, and the second is on November the 18th, 10 days apart, yes. And you will be receiving more details on that as far as time and location. So with that said, that's what the nominating committee has been up to recently.
All right, so I know that we didn't call for any other business, so, and I can see fans going, which means that it is hot as heck in here, and so I will call the meeting to adjourn at 2:34. All those in favor, or a second on that, or do we go just, okay. All right, we're good. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending.